Hello, and welcome to Kernels. I'm Becky Heil, Southeast District Consultant for the State Library of Iowa. Our guest today is Alecs Mickunas, Library Director at the Fairfield Public Library, and he's going to talk to us today about using GIS software for a mapping project. So let's get started. Alecs, can you start by telling us what prompted you to think about mapping your users?
Thanks so much, Becky. It's really an honor and a privilege to get to be here today with you and to share my experience with librarians across the state of Iowa. Well, just a little background. Um, about a little less than a year ago, we learned from our county supervisors that our library was going to see county funding cut by approximately $18,000 for this current fiscal year we're in now. And we had seen kind of incremental cuts over the course of the last decade. 10 years ago, 10 years ago, our library was getting funded an additional $20,000 more than it was a year ago. But the cuts had been incremental. Last year was the biggest cut we'd ever seen. And when I inquired from the county supervisors what had precipitated that, they told us that there had been some legislation at the state level, and they were basically not going to have the funding for the library that they used to, because they aren't going to be able to tax county residents the way they have been able to before. So I shared this with my library trustees, and our mayor, and it really did come as a shock, but it sort of forced us to think about where we could gather information about our rural users. And we want to share that information with the supervisors in the hopes that they don't further decrease funding, and potentially even can increase funding to us again, because this is extremely important for our city. Fairfield is, I don't know how unique in that we're the only public library in our county. So we do service all of our county residents, and we don't have to share county funding with other libraries. So we've been really fortunate in that regard, I guess you could say, to have kind of centralized library services. But so one of our trustees, together with actually our children's librarian, recommended that we look into some data visualization to show our county supervisors where how many rural residents are using the library services, and how much usage there is.
Great idea.
I had while I was studying library and information science at the University of Iowa, I had encountered some staff in the digital scholarship and publishing studio, and I had actually seen the Walt Whitman archives utilize some really incredible technology to show, for example, where the people were living in the country who Walt Whitman was communicating with, and also where Walt Whitman was living at different times while he was doing different work. And I thought, wow, that looks like something we can utilize here in Fairfield.
Great. And this is a project that you aren't going to be able to undertake yourself for the most part. We librarians
Right.
don't have access to some of that really cool GIS software that's out there. A lot of counties have access to it, but it's not something, and cities as well, but it's not something that they routinely share with public libraries. So you kind of had to go on a hunt at that point. You kind of knew what you wanted it to be at the end and how you were going to use it. So I know that you found someone at the University of Iowa. So talk to us a little bit about how you found Jay, and then sort of take it from there into how did you guys work together to make it what you needed and what you wanted?
Great, thank you. Well, it's interesting reflecting on it now and thinking about how much effort went into it and how long it took. So it was It was under 2 months that we worked in the project. It was early May of 2023 when we began the project. And I first reached out to Stephanie Blaylock, the digital humanities librarian at the University of Iowa. She's also an adjunct instructor there. She's the project manager and associate editor for the Walt Whitman Archive, and I reached out to her because I knew her for that project. And she connected me with Jay Bowen. And Jay's been with the university for a few years now. He comes from the GIS world, and I knew that the university had some they knew of free resources that could be useful to us here in this project. And so Jay was really enthusiastic about the project. He said, that sounds like a really great idea. I'd be happy to help you with that. Um, we had some initial concerns in terms of patron privacy. But because we planned from the very beginning to store all of the data on GitHub, which is very secure, and we weren't going to be showing anything about what particular materials circulated, I felt comfortable enough working with Jay on the project and sharing some select information with him. So once we kind of got through that part of the initial setup, that kind of agreement, I started collecting data about our usage. And so what I looked at was, well, first I realized that I had to actually collect two different reports, and we had to combine them. So the first report was it was basically every user with their library account number, their address, and how much they had checked out. And it had, I think, their name associated in that report.
What kind of a time frame did you use for that? Just a year's worth, or?
It was a year, yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a second report that was user names and account IDs. So we were able to basically pull the account ID from that particular report, and then kind of merge it with the report that actually showed annual usage. So I got that, and I sent that on to Jay, and Jay created an initial map for us. I don't have access to that version anymore exactly the way it looked before. But we knew that we also wanted to at least get overdrive statistics. We're fortunate to be well enough funded by donations and gifts here at a library to have a lot of digital resources that we offer. But I really wanted to look at just book and periodical circulations. That was like the main focus. So I ended up learning how to get that report from Overdrive as well to show those users. The interesting thing was we found that the number of Overdrive users, well, the number of Overdrive users was less than the number of users who are using physical materials. It was about 325 total users for Overdrive for the year, and then 575 for physical materials.
So is that for city and county, or was that just county
That's
numbers?
County, including
Okay.
city.
Okay.
That's active users for the last year. The really interesting thing that's still kind of an unsolved mystery is there were some Overdrive users that actually they don't have a Fairfield Public Library account associated with them. I don't know how these people are getting in and using Overdrive without an associated library ID. And then we also found kind of like the reverse, where there were some users who, well, I mean, I guess it's there were like, you know, a significant number of users who weren't using Overdrive, but it was strange that there were these mysterious Overdrive users who somehow didn't have an account number in the system. Um, so you know, we wanted to make it clear that there's some inconsistency, some kind of unexplained numbers, but it's a very small number. But by the end, after tweaking some of our reports, there are only two users that were sort of unexplainable. But yeah, you'll definitely find some weird kind of glitches when you run these reports and start comparing numbers.
I'm sure that, and I think that's really typical. We did things, back in the earlier days when we didn't know exactly what we were doing when we set up the ILS, or we coded people wrong. And I think that same thing has happened as we, added those bridges things. So I think that's not
Mhm.
super unusual, but I like the fact that you make sure to keep that in your mind. And when you talk to people about this data, we let
Mhm.
them know this is not a truly scientific, everything down exactly, that we can say for sure, but you're confident enough in the data that you have that it does reflect trends, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. I feel like it's like 99.99% accurate. Um, so we got to that point, and we're feeling pretty good about it all. Another thing, another thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to show in our map where our contracting communities were, because we thought, this could be good too when we check in with them. We can say, hey, you've got this many borrowers, and look at that one who's borrowing so much, and so maybe we would be able to negotiate a little bit, as in this next fiscal year when we ask them for a little bit more funding.
I think that's a great way to use that data, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we're also going to do a quick demo so that Alex is going to be able to show you what this map looks like. Um, I also wanted to ask Alex, what do you think? You talked about the amount of time that it took. We've talked a little bit, and you might want to expound on that a little bit more about the level of expertise that it takes to kind of do something like this. So I guess my question then is, would you recommend other libraries look into this? Was the project worthwhile for you? Did you get enough out of it for what you had to put in?
Yeah, well, I honestly I was just really assisting Jay. Jay, took, you know, took responsibility for, creating the map and, working with the reports actually. I did some merging of reports, but he was able to kind of adjust everything so that the program would accept it. Um, Jay told me that the prep work was done in a program called QGIS version 3.16, and the coding was a combination of CSS, HTML, and leaflet JavaScript. That's you know, I mean, I know from library school about CSS and HTML, but JavaScript, I I'm totally I'm not versed in that whatsoever.
Outside of most librarians' skill set, I suspect.
Yeah. Jay said that Leaflet is a nice open source JavaScript library specific program written for web map applications. And QGIS is pretty comprehensive, and a free GIS software. He said if you ever need to save some money by forgoing proprietary GIS software, he recommends it. Um, I I think sort of in the way I kind of saw this all happening, this was actually probably really, really easy for Jay. I don't think it took him very long. So I think with the right training, um, most librarians could do this work on their own. But I think that it's one of those situations where you need to kind of spend some time with it on a regular basis, or have really detailed instructions for yourself when you're updating your maps and that sort of thing. I think that this map that we're going to show you is really um, it's, you know, it's really, really very informative. But I think that I think you really need to you need to keep it up to date, and it's, to be able to compare it with maps, over the course of, a year or several years. So like for example, I'm pretty happy to share that in May we had 575 uh, users who at the library who had borrowed materials in the last year. Um, since Library Card Sign Up Month, we have now over 807 active
Wow,
active
that's
users.
amazing.
It's a huge leap. So I mean, I really want to see what the map what our map would look like now and how it compares with our last map. Our library also has we have just under 3,000 total users in our system, and we've um, we've recently started purging libraries that have had an inactive account for 3 years or more, which I think is pretty reasonable.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very
so
common, I think.
so yeah, I really want to get this map up to date. But but
So
yeah, go
I have a
ahead.
question for you then. Since you were so kind of dependent on Jay, you were able to pull the reports, but then you kind of had to give him to him to put into the map. Are you continuing that relationship then, or is this something that, since I didn't realize that it
Yeah.
was free software, is it
Hmm.
something that you now have access to and can learn how to go ahead and update that map
Yeah,
so that you can look at those things?
I do. Well, the amazing thing about GitHub is, it basically, I mean, it in a sense it contains all the instructions you need, but it's just a matter of like decoding the instructions. And I think that my next step would probably be to spend a little time with Jay and kind of digging into the resources that we have, you know, um, stored in GitHub now, and get more familiar with just reading that code, getting kind of familiar with what it looks like. Um, I know it's going to be basically just dropping similar files in the same place, in order to get everything updated. But yeah, I think for probably the average librarian in our state, um, this is a challenging project. But I think once you get familiar with the process, I mean, there are all kinds of other applications for this kind of technology. I mean, you could look at specific databases or digital resources you have and look at just that usage. You can create different layers in the map to see, you know, where people are using different resources. I'm looking forward to showing you what it looks like. It's a really cool resource.
Yeah. I have two quick things I want to sort of interject. The first one is many counties do have a GIS person on staff. I just heard from a county fairly recently, actually at ILA or right prior to ILA, that their county GIS person has said, we've got this software, we pay for it. What kind of data would you like? And so they are now working with that person to do something very similar to what you did. So they do have the ability to have someone with that expertise. The other thing that I'm thinking this would be really useful for is thinking about things like bookmobiles or pop-up libraries or a book bike, or looking for, do we need another branch? Where are those users concentrated and how can we serve them better? Are they far from where we are? If there's a pocket, what can we do to sort of help with the folks in that area? So I think both of those things are kind of cool, that many counties will have somebody that you can utilize if you're not able to do it on your own. And then the fact that, like you said, there's lots of ways this data can be used. So let me sort of go into the next piece then. Let's go ahead and start that demo. And I think as you can go ahead and sort of pull that up so people can see what it looks like. But as you're talking to us about the data and how you've got it, tell us a little bit about how you're using that now. I'm curious if that information has gone to the Board of Supervisors at this point, and if so, what their reaction was, or the reactions of anybody that you've shared this with. So go ahead and share your screen and we'll take a look at what this looks like.
How does it look?
That looks great on my end.
Good. Okay. So what you're seeing right now is sort of it's the heat map version of our final product. And initially, we would look at it this way. Let's see here. So this is sort of more like a traditional visualization showing usage, where the bigger circles represent higher usage. And you can see, every one of these circles is a user. So we have a lot of really, big users here in like the center of town and here in Fairfield. One thing that's nice about this is there's, it doesn't actually it used to show the address, but we removed that to protect the privacy of the patrons. But when I first showed this to staff, we were just really shocked to see the usage of some of these like high users. So that's how many books they've borrowed in the last year. So these people really are using tons of resources, and those are books borrowed. That's just the physical material. So that's also DVDs, CDs, things like that. And we, honestly, I was kind of in a state of disbelief when I first saw this. But then when I went and I looked at who the users were and pulled it up in the system, I thought to myself, all right, I believe that. That person is in here every single day. They leave with like a tall stack of materials on a regular basis. And then, when we kind of pan out, we can see, there are users across Jefferson County, and we even have, in the county south of us, we have a lot of users, and staff said, "Oh yeah, we see those people in here all the time. They're the main users from outside of Jefferson County." And then these big circles out here, these are actually the public libraries that use interlibrary loan. So it's kind of neat to see too, like which libraries are using us most for interlibrary loan.
Oh, that's a great statistic. I like that.
Yeah. And then, I mean, we are seeing, quite a bit of use across the county, but the sort of disappointing truth is that we don't see the high usage outside of our city limits that we were hoping to see, that we would be able to use to justify, to the county to, preserve our funding or increase our funding. But, what the result that the report had on my strategy and our board strategy is we need to do more outreach. We need to get out there. We need to visit these contracting towns and these rural users more often. And so actually during library card sign up month, we engaged in 4 different outreach activities, more in a single year than we've done since before the pandemic. One of them was in Lockridge, that's one of our contracting towns, and we went to their Lockridge Fun Day, and we were signing people up for library cards. We were telling them about our new services, and I also, based on what I see in the map, I learned that I need to be in communication with our county supervisors more and keeping them up to date with what services we're offering and what our efforts are in terms of outreach to our rural residents. And I think that all of the efforts over the course of the last 6 months have led to that really encouraging 800 active users number. So I think if we can really kind of focus on expanding usership for even a few months a year, I think that eventually we're going to get get that expanded usership in the rural part of the county that we want. Another thing I'd like to show, so
Sure.
here's here's what the online usage looks like with Overdrive. So I'll just kind of flip back and forth a couple of times and let you see what that difference looks like. You know, we of course have many users. I mean, you can see them right here who love Overdrive, but the truth is we have a lot of users who still don't know about it or haven't transitioned yet or embraced ebooks and e-audiobooks. Um, we also have the option of let's see here. Sorry, my computer is not quite cooperating the way I want it to. Whoa, sorry about that, everybody. So this is the heat map version. I want to show this just because, you know, it's thought that the heat map version, it's a little bit more abstract, but also protects patron privacy a little bit better. And this is maybe the preferred version, you know, for sharing publicly about usage in our county. And then here is so this is book, you know, book and materials checkout looks like physical things. And then here is Overdrive. And then if we move out and look at those two, there's physical, Overdrive, and then here's physical and Overdrive. So those are the main functions we have built into it right now, but you could add more layers. You could have a different layer for every e-resource, actually. It would just be a matter of, you know, pulling the right reports and, you know, merging that well, I think probably the Overdrive would have Overdrive, that report doesn't have addresses. So and it would be the same with all of the other e-resources. It would have probably the account number associated, but not the address. So you'd need to merge all of your e-resource reports with a report that has addresses associated.
I'm just fascinated by, you know, you kind of went into this project with one specific thing. You wanted to show that you had users outside of the county, but what you've been able to do with this data and the way you've been able to compare, you know, your Overdrive users and your in-print users, and the way you've been able to think about how do we market based on what we found out here. How do we, I mean, I can see this impacting a library in terms of how do we set our hours? You know, maybe those people who live
Oh
far
yeah.
away can't get to us because we're closed by the time they're, you know, there's just so many ways that you could sort of interpret this and use this data. This is just fascinating to me.
Mhm.
I'm really taken with, once you start digging into it, what you can actually do with that data and how it can change your library services, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, and over here too, I like this, you know, the key for books borrowed. So we can see that you know, most of our borrowers are in that kind of probably, you know, under 115 materials checked out a year. But you know, I mean that's something. That's significant. So and I have a feeling that you know, most of our borrowers, it'd be interesting to kind of look at that 1 to 114 and like, you know, see, you know, what's the average in that group. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to dig into here. It's fun. but it's challenging to find the time for these things. But even if you can do it, you know, a couple times a year or, maybe 4 times a year. Sure, I know that a lot of librarians, and just, library workers across the state, when they hear about this kind of work, they may feel like this is way too much work, even if they have someone helping them with it, or it may just be kind of oh, it just feels like something extra that they don't have time for. And I just want to encourage everyone to just give it a try. Um, Jay Bowen at the University of Iowa is an amazing resource, and it may be that we can develop more of a partnership with the School of Library and Information Science in Iowa City, and maybe there can be some kind of annual training program or something like that for librarians. I think it's definitely valuable. Or maybe we just tap those at the county level that have that expertise. But even if you generate a map like this once a year, I think it's a valuable thing, and I think we should um, just expand our capacity however we can.
I agree. And I think, again, like I said, your usage of this data really shows us how helpful it can be as we're sort of plotting the future of the library. So one of the things I forgot to ask you, Alex, are you willing to answer questions for any of the people who are watching this today if they would give you a call or send you an email? And you guys can all get Alex's information through the Iowa Library Directory or on their webpage.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to talk to other librarians, directors, library workers across the state.
Great,
Yes, it'd be great.
great. All right, thank you. So I just want to sort of finish us off here by saying thank you, a huge thank you to Alex for taking his time and effort to be part of our kernels today. And I also want to remind people, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can check out the links in the description for more information. If you're in Iowa Learns, those things are usually stored as attachments. And one more little plug, if you are doing something at your library, a program, an initiative, a service, or something else that you think would make a great kernel, we want to hear about it. So reach out and tell us. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, a huge thank you to Alex.
Thank you, Becky.